Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Pachy Mom Show, coming to you tonight live from our living room. And with us, we have a special guest that I know you'll be thrilled of. Let me tell you a little bit about our special guest. Our special guest was born and raised in Botswana. When she was a young girl, she moved to Gaborone. Later, she went to the University of Botswana in Gaborone, got a bachelor's degree in science from communications. Unfortunately, due to an accident during a safari, she is now a chronic pain patient herself. She goes around the world advocating for herself and for chronic pain patients. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce Passionate Pachyderm.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me. I'm Pauline, the new Passionate Pachyderm spokesperson. Well, I guess spokes-pachyderm would be more like it.
Pauline, it is a pleasure to have you here this evening. I know that you came a long way to be here with us, and I know that you have the same passion that all of our listeners have as far as fighting chronic pain. I know that we have asked you to do a number of things over the course of the next year or two. One of the most thrilling things being that you're going to be with us when we go to the GOP convention in Charlotte next year.
Absolutely.
So we're looking forward to that. Tell us maybe some of the other things that you've agreed to do for us.
Well, I'm here to help teach chronic pain patients how to be the elephant in the room. Because let's face it, when you're constantly in pain, you are the elephant in the room. So we might as well own it. Let's take advantage of it. Let's use that as an opportunity to teach people what's true about chronic pain and the patients who suffer from it, and what's just flat out lies.
Well, we certainly appreciate you coming all this way from Africa just to be with us, and we hope that you found your accommodations here okay. I know that the Poodles love having you here, and they would love to see you stay all the time, and we would too, but we know that we can't selfishly keep you, that the rest of the world needs you too as far as advocating for us.
That's right. So, but I'll be back, and I'll be doing lots of things for Passionate Pachyderms.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
So I'm going to go, and I'm going to grab your Pachy so she can finish telling me about all the stuff that's happened over the week.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you, Pauline. Let's give her a nice round of applause. You know, it's not often that we're able to have guests on the Pachy Show. Most often, if we do, they're not in person or in studio guests. Where tonight we were fortunate enough to have her. Let me tell you, a plane ticket from Botswana to Virginia, it's not cheap, but we know it was well worth it with the fight that everybody's going through. And it's not about the dollars, it's about doing what we need to do to get things changed. I know that Pachy Mom was thrilled, and she's just finishing up a few things, and then she's going to be in. It was her turn to do the dishes tonight, so I got lucky. I cooked, she's doing the dishes, and I think she's just about finishing up. So while we wait for her, there was a lot of exciting things that Pachy and her pack had found out over the week, and I know that Pachy Mom is very anxious to share all of those with you, and I don't want to steal any of her thunder, but the stuff that we found out, people at times consider us conspiracy theorists. Unfortunately, when you're proven correct time after time after time, it's no longer a conspiracy theory, it becomes fact.
Hi, everybody. Glad you had a chance to meet Pauline. And we've got a bunch of stuff to go over with y'all tonight. Let me just look at my list real quick here so that I don't start telling you what Pauline already did. Okay. First thing that I'd like to talk to y'all about is what happened with Dr. Drew and his show. One of the chronic pain patients from Twitter, her name is Tamara Stewart. She called in to the Dr. Drew show, and you have to keep them still because they're messing up the camera here. She wanted to tell them and explain about chronic pain patients and the things that are happening to them. She was extremely articulate about it. I listened to a recording of the show where she called in, and they cut her off. At every opportunity, they cut her off. And she remained very calm and polite. At one point, she was explaining to them some of her diagnoses and how she, her condition and the medications that she takes. And again, they cut her off. And one of them, and I apologize, I don't know whether it was Drew or the other person he had on, asked her very rudely if she had been abused as a child. Now, that statement, when I heard it, I gotta tell you, you guys, that spun me like a top. Because as I went through 8 years, seeing over 157 different doctors before I finally got diagnosed with mastocytosis, there was one doctor in particular who kept me in his little exam room and insisted that I had been sexually abused as a child and that I was just repressing it because I couldn't possibly be having all of the things that were wrong with me. Never mind that my white blood cell count was non-existent, that there was just all kinds of very objective proof going on that there was something wrong, because this guy couldn't put a name to it himself, and he thought of himself as some sort of god-like doctor or whatever. He was insistent that what was going on is that I was some sort of abuse victim. I explained to him that my father died when I was 11 years old and that there were no men in our household or in my life as a child. So there was never any opportunity for anyone to have ever sexually abused me as a child. He was not hearing of it. He would not have it. Absolutely insisted that I had been molested, abused, any number of different things. So when I heard that, it just really triggered me. And then I listened as the man who calls himself Dr. Drew, and I use the doctor prefix very loosely there, because I don't feel like anybody who would do the things that he did deserves that title. He victimized someone who called in and was innocently trying to advocate for pain patients. And instead of listening to her, instead of hearing her out, he belittled her. He asked her that personal question They wouldn't allow her, they asked her questions and then wouldn't allow her to speak. It was terrible. And for whatever reason, Tamara had the presence of mind to record the phone call. And they cut her off, and they thought that she had hung up or that the mics had cut off or whatever. But on a hot mic, Dr. Drew was heard saying, "What a bunch of druggy wannabes," or some such thing, something along those lines. Well, that fired up the chronic pain community, as you all can well imagine. And some other things happened, and he relented and decided that yes, he would have a show where advocates of chronic pain patients could come on and have their say. So Dr. Dan Laird, whom most of you know, and Dr. Vanilla, and I'm sorry, I'm not saying her name right, so I apologize. I think it's Sign or Scene. Again, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it right. Anyway, the spelling is S-I-G-N, so I think it's Scene or Sign. They went and represented chronic pain patients and did their very best with Drew. I'm not even going to use the doctor title, so I don't think he deserves it. And during that entire show, they tried to explain to him what's happening out in the real world with chronic pain patients, how they've been tapered. Some were tapered in one day, they called it. Well, you can't taper someone in one day. Basically, that means they were just cut off. Others were just rapidly tapered down to extremely low doses that were not effectual. You all know the story. That even acute pain patients, surgical patients, accident victims, I mean, we are seeing daily more and more people reaching out to us and saying, you know, my mom had surgery, she had a mastectomy, and was sent home with no pain medication. The state of Michigan just came out with a guideline, another guideline, saying that someone who had complete hysterectomy was only entitled to 5 milligram oxycodone pills after the surgery. I mean, this is getting absolutely insane what's happening. And Dr. Laird and Dr. Stein were trying to explain this to Drew. And at one point he said, well, where is this happening? Because I'm not seeing it here. I don't know anything about this. And Dr. Laird said, well, it's happening all across the country. But because Drew was being very defensive and demanding to know where it was happening, he walked all over Dr. Laird. So the message, Dr. Laird was able to deliver that message, but he basically wasn't allowed to deliver it as clearly as I'm sure he would have liked. All the while, Drew kept pushing Suboxone. Why aren't these chronic pain patients put on Suboxone? Why aren't they taking buprenorphine? Well, you know, he's another one, just like Andrew Kolodny, who seems to think that buprenorphine or Suboxone is the miracle answer to everything, that it will cure everything from a yeast infection to addiction. And I'm uncomfortable with how these doctors are pushing this one specific drug. The reason why I'm uncomfortable with it is because that drug comes with 25 pages of warnings and side effects. 25 pages. It is a fairly new drug, at least not the buprenorphine, let me backtrack. It's, trying to think the name of it. I'm sorry, it's not coming to me because I don't have written notes this time. Can't give you the exact word, but Suboxone is buprenorphine combined with Narcan, so that it's given to addicts. Now, chronic pain patients are not addicts. There is absolutely no reason why a chronic pain patient who was or is currently stable on some other kind of pain medication should be taken off that pain medication that they're stable on and have found an adequate dose of and switched to a medication that has 25 pages of side effects and warnings. That's crazy. I can't imagine any medical person worth their salt would think that that was a good idea. But yet they're doing it. Many in the addiction community think that chronic pain patients should be on this, the addicts should be on it. And in my opinion, and I've seen this happen with methadone, anybody who decides to relent and allow them to put them on Suboxone, anytime a doctor or a medical professional sees your file after that, as soon as they see that word, Suboxone, they're immediately going to think addict. And I know this because I've seen it, like I said, with methadone, and I made a comment similar to this on Twitter the other day, and several doctors chimed in and said, when I see that, that's immediately the thing that comes to mind. So I am not wrong in what I'm saying.
I think what worries me also is when you look at the chronic pain, and if you have a opioid that is in a more pure form and it's doing exactly what it's been designed to do at a dosage that is safe for a patient, why would you want to combine that drug with another drug and have the patient take both those drugs in combination? It's not going to work any better for them. It's not going to be any safer for them, especially knowing that there's 25 pages of warnings and side effects to it. So it would be like if you were going to take your heart medication and they wanted to add on anti-insulin properties to it. Why would you take your heart medication and anti-insulin properties if you don't have any issues with insulin? Chronic pain patients don't have issues with misusing or overdosing of opioids except in rare occasions, 1%. So why would you piggyback on this other drug? Plus, who knows what the long-term side effects of the Narcan component of that is. This drug was fast-tracked, which means it went through minimal clinical trials. It was rushed to market. Unfortunately, and you're going to love this, the government, in its wisdom, paid $26 million to help create Suboxone. And I can understand why. In good thinking, you think, okay, the government is trying to find something that will be safe, a safe alternative to just taking opioid pain medication. But what they didn't realize is when they had done this, they had created a tiger that is now let out of the cage because Suboxone is far, 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 far more addictive than just the opiates by itself. So you've got this anti-addiction drug that's addictive. Only the government would help fund and pay for an anti-addictive pain medication that is more addictive than what's out there. Now, it turns out that also the government apparently felt that the manufacturers lied because they turned around and they sued the manufacturers of Suboxone for, what was it, $750 million?
Three-quarters of a billion.
$750 million. So that tells you right there that one of two things happened. Either the government felt they didn't get what they paid for, which I don't think they did, and second of all, they must have known that the makers of Suboxone had to have lied in their trials in order to get it cleared by the FDA. There's no other way around it. Why would you approve a drug that's more addictive to fight addiction? It just doesn't make any sense.
Right, so we're just finding all this out. I just came across the laws or the information that pointed me in the direction that our government gave the makers of Suboxone $26 million to help develop it. That was like a what moment. I had known about the second law, about the lawsuit. I didn't know what the recovery amount was, and there were several reasons that lawsuit was brought. Part of it was because of their marketing practices. They were guilty of the exact same thing the makers of OxyContin were sued and guilty of, saying that something was less addicting than it was. In addition to that, their marketing of Suboxone, when they changed it from a pill form to these like little cling things that that melt in your mouth. I'm not quite sure how to say it, but
it's a gel tab,
yeah.
And it's in the same type of packaging that you would do like for contact, where you've got gel tabs in the foil packet, and they said that that was much safer, and that's how they got around the initial patent for it. Is they came out and they repatented and said, oh, this is much safer because we've got it in gel form in a foil pack rather than pills. That's the only thing they changed, is the delivery system.
And so because of that, they were trying to say that it was much less it was safer for little kids. Well, little kids there was only ever 2 instances of little kids getting into it before. So there really was no reason for them to change their formula. What they were doing is they wanted to hold on to the patent for the original formula. And the only way they could do that was to change it up a little bit, just enough so they could hold on to the patent and it wouldn't go to generic.
Plus, they charged more for the gel pack, even though it was actually cheaper for them to manufacture than the others.
Yeah. So, all this stuff was going on. Dr. Laird and Dr. Sine were on Drew's show. He showed them slightly more respect than he showed Tamara, the original caller. However, he did keep pushing Suboxone, like I said, and that's another thing that bothers me. Why are these doctors pushing this drug so hard? What are they getting out of it? Are they getting money? Are they getting homes? Are they getting trips? Are they getting accolades? Are they getting recognition? What's the reason behind these people who are so anti-pain patient? What is the reason behind them just singing the praises of Suboxone for everything? Even though 6 months ago, right in that 25-page packaging that came with Suboxone, it said, this is not intended for the treatment of pain patients. Suddenly, that wording has disappeared now. Go figure.
I think a lot of times with doctors, so to speak, like Dr. Drew, it's laziness. They heard about it, they saw an article about it, and they read it, first paragraph, second paragraph, and all of a sudden they decided they were the instant expert, and that's going to be the cure to everything is, Suboxone. If we could If we could get that on the market and get everybody taking that, we wouldn't have any chronic pain patients, we wouldn't have any addiction. You know, the fentanyl and the heroin would somehow just magically disappear from all across the United States if everybody was using Suboxone. And, you know, to me, there's good doctors, which many of us are blessed to have good doctors that are working under incredibly tough situations. And then there's lazy doctors like Dr. Drew that just tout whatever line happens to be popular that particular day, or whatever they read on Yahoo News or something like that. And those are the ones that are doing us the most damage.
Yeah. So, okay, I don't want to belabor this too much, and I promised Chuck that we were going to keep this one short tonight. So next thing I'd like to go on to is Tanya Bugess, Bugess. She is a U.S. congressional candidate for the state of Texas. Tanya has been on Twitter. She is 100% behind us as pain patients. Her husband was a pain patient. He got caught up in some stuff simply because he was in pain and had no other option. She is a pain patient, so she is solidly behind what we're trying to do. She is advocating for us, and she has been a very, very strong, loud voice over the last few weeks, and she will continue to be. So please, please support Tanya in any way you possibly can.
Get on her website. Most of those congressional websites, they've got it set up where you can actually make phone calls on behalf of the candidate from your home. So even if you're living here in Virginia like we are and you want to make phone calls, you dial into a local number. They connect you up with their phone system. It seems like the call is coming from Texas, and you go, "Hi, my name is Robert, and I'm calling on behalf of Tanya, who's running for Congress." They give you the talking points, and it's easy, and it's a positive step that you can do. If we can start getting more people like Tanya into Congress, we're going to have a foothold that we can make some steps from.
Next person is CIAAG's Lauren DeLuca, who spoke for the second time to the United Nations about the plight of chronic pain patients in the United States and what's been happening to us. And I cannot give Lauren enough credit. I mean, imagine how nerve-wracking that must have been. Lauren has is a chronic pain patient as well, and struggles with the things that she suffers from. But this is the second time that she's gone in front of the UN and spoken to them on our behalf. So I want to say thank you to Lauren, and if you see her on social media, please reach out to her and thank her as well.
And Lauren has been an absolute rock star in that. I listened to her 5-minute speech to the UN. She was clear, she was concise, it was easy to understand. She made her points perfectly. I can't imagine anybody who could have, one, been a better spokesman, or two, done a better job of explaining the plight that chronic pain patients have than Laura. So absolutely kudos to her.
And again, I want to
Lauren,
thank.
I'm sorry.
I want to thank Tamara Stewart, who was the original caller for the Dr. Drew show. I'm sorry things turned out the way that they did for Tamara, and she didn't get the opportunity to be on the Dr. Drew show. But I want to personally thank her for letting the chronic pain patient community know what happened to her, so that collectively we could all act and support her after what happened.
And having the courage to call to begin with.
Right. So just a couple little quips that I want to leave you all with, stuff that you can certainly go on Facebook and Twitter and you can use as talking points. According to the CDC, 150 people in the U.S. die each day of the flu, which the CDC makes inoculations for. and 115 people die of opiate-related causes, less than 1% of which involve prescription pain medications that were written for that person. So,
Less than 2 per day.
yeah, significantly less, so 1.15 per day. That doesn't sound like an epidemic to me, and I know it doesn't to you all either. And the second thing is chemotherapy is more toxic and likely to kill a person than opiate pain medications. So I want to leave you with those two thoughts, and I want to thank Pauline for joining us and agreeing to be our pachyderm, or our spokes pachyderm, I guess.
Spokes Pachy, yep.
And you'll be seeing Pauline more often, and we really appreciate her making the trip to come to Virginia and help us out with this stuff. And we hope you guys will be watching for her too. And we will see you soon.
And for those of you that are good meme makers, remember those two thoughts. Chemo is safer than opioid pain medication.
No. Other way around.
I'm sorry, opioids. Oh gosh, now I'm tongue twisted. Opioids are safer than chemotherapy, and less than 1 person per day dies from opioid overdose of their own prescription medications.
Right.
So if you can make memes out of that, make it and flood it, because people don't realize it, and when you put it in a way that makes it that down to earth and something that everyone can relate to, that's how you make an impact.
Right. We have to let regular people know who don't understand, who've been believing these lies. We have to let them know that this is about illegally manufactured fentanyl and laced with
Anything in the world.
the stuff that it's laced with, and heroin, and that it's coming in across our borders. That this has nothing to do with chronic pain patients or the doctors who write our prescriptions. I hope that everyone who watches this, I hope that none of you have to experience the kinds of things that we've experienced as chronic pain patients. If you have, I'm sorry. If you're new to this whole phenomena and you've been an acute pain patient, or you have family members who have been, maybe they've had surgery, had an accident. We're hearing constantly about hospice patients who can't get pain medication. Hospice patients, these people are dying, for God's sakes. They can't get it. And this Dr. Drew supposedly knew nothing about it. Gee, let's play ignorant. If he didn't know anything about it, guess what? He shouldn't be a physician. So anyway, that's my opinion. I am Pachy, Passionate Pachyderms, the brutally honest elephant in every room, and I tell it like it is.
Thanks for joining us.
Have a good night.